What up guys, JT Anime Nerd here, bringing you all that nerdy goodness. Today I'm going to share with you all the first of my own series of short stories that play more into the audio territory, which means there aren't any sound effects or render visuals as usual, other than some light music and the image you see on screen. I'm actually going to be doing these kinds of videos a lot more for a reason, and that is that Clipchamp, the editing software I use, has been going on a lagging streak lately. Even for 5-minute videos. I'm pretty sure it's because of all the music and sound effects I use in these videos, but it's making the process of finishing them on time much slower. Which is why I've been uploading shorts mostly this past month. I want to keep consistent with my usual schedule, and that is at least getting out 2 or 3 videos a week. I've even had to only post one video if I couldn't make the quota, and I don't like that. If not for the lag, I'd be finishing these videos on time, but Clipchamp is being supremely difficult lately. I haven't mentioned this before, and I'm definitely positive that many YouTubers can relate to this, but I really hate the editing process. I'm hoping to find good or perhaps a great editor one day, one that's local to where I am. But until then, it's just me doing the editing. So while I'm working on the slow process of the videos that have editing in them, I'm going to be airing many stories, mostly the Excaliverse stories, in an audiobook format. Now, I want to make it clear this doesn't mean that any of the already edited and complete videos are going to just be the auditorial from now on. Any video series I made that already has editing put into it is gonna stay edited to keep its integrity, so don't worry about that. Audio stories will be completely new stories from beginning to end. I just need to lighten the workload so I can keep up with my schedule. I hope you guys can understand why most of my new videos are going to be auditorial for the upcoming future until this lagging problem gets resolved. Now, I think I've talked long enough. I know why you're all here. And so, I'm proud to introduce you to my first audio drama short story. It takes place within the Excaliverse, a universe where characters of mythology, fables, fairy tales, classic horror, and ancient history exist on a medieval Earth as superheroes and supervillains. This story takes place in the universe's version of the Land of the Lost, which is hidden beneath the first layer of the Earth, and centers around a reptilian female who feels she is destined for more than what life has dealt her. So, without further ado, I give you Mother Klaww. Mother Klaww, a Land of the Lost short story. Inspired by the short story Our Lady of the Sauropods by Robert Silverberg. How long have I fled? Minutes? Hours? Time has become a haze, slipping like blood between grasping fingers. Who am I? Perhaps who I was is but an echo, drowned in the ceaseless drum of pursuit. All that remains is the certainty that should I falter, should I tarry but a moment longer in the open, death shall be my reward. I press my back against the gnarled bark of a withered tree, my breath shallow, my limbs quaking. By the winged ancestors, how has fate conspired to bring me to this grim precipice? The earth below my feet trembles beneath the weight of a clawed titan. Its slow march relentless, its form glimpsed through the veil of a skyless night. And then, I see it. A shape wreathed in shadow and awe. A colossus, wrought in the image of our hallowed forebearers. The king of the wingless. The great tyrant in all of its majesty. Sovereign of the wingless dragons. His gaze scours the land, and I know I am but prey should I be discovered. In this fleeting moment, my life unfurls before me. A daughter of the bearded sages, yet my fate casts not in honor, but in sorrow. Such is the yoke borne by those shackled beneath the dominion of a patriarchy. The lost lands, with their hidden whispers of magics, are not permitted to the daughters of the bearded sages, for it was not our place. So we were told. We dwell beneath the earth's suffocating embrace, where the sky is but a distant mirage veiled beyond a shroud of mist and stone. I was naught but a guardian of the nursery, my hand tending the eggs that held our future, for such it was the decree upon our sex. To mate, to lay, to rear the young. A cycle unbroken, a duty challenged. But even in this, fate had cast me adrift. A cruel jest that my form was barren, incapable of the sacred duty thrust upon me by birthright. No matter the effort, no matter the endless and loveless nights of mating, I would bring forth no life. Many mates I have lost to this falling, and many more have turned away in revulsion. My father's gaze carries only disappointment, his thoughts unspoken yet clear as the crystals that scour the lost lands. That death would be a mercy, though more for him than I. Yet, by grace of necessity, my hands were not idle. My place as caretaker afforded me a meager foothold within our society. But was it ever truly enough? Would it ever be? The truth beholds that it never was. Not for me. Even before the weight of my barren curse was known, I hungered for something greater. I wished not for the shackles of closed-minded tradition, but the freedom of the hunt. Among the bearded sages, males born without the touch of magic were cast into the path of hunters and gatherers. My father, ever burdened by his expectations, had already suffered one disappointment before I ever came along. My elder brother, born bereft of magic, fated instead to become the mightiest warrior of our people. And in this, at least, he did not fail. Yet of all our civilization, only he showed me kindness. When my father would have cast me into the abyss for the crime of being born female to the Grand Master of Sages himself, it was my brother who stayed his hand, who pleaded for my life. He saw within me something my father dared not. Potential. He believed that I could be more, that change was an inevitability, creeping forth as surely as the tide, something he knew better than to use in his argument against father. I had spoken often and boldly of my dreams. To stand as his equal, to hunt as he did, he embraced this dream, nurtured it in secret. But my father, he only saw heresy, a threat to the very foundation of our way of life. Not all of my mates were gentle, in both life or in the ritual of mating itself. My father saw to that personally, selecting those who would remind me, with cruelty and force, of my place. It was through this torment that my barren truth was revealed, a final insult, an unspoken decree that I was naught but a failure. Yet even in my despair, fate conspired to offer me one last chance. A guardian of the lost lands, the wandering monitor, had laid its egg. A successor born to take up the eternal vigil and uphold the balance of the lost lands. But such a birth was not without consequence. The great beast had grown feral in defense of its child, its wrath indiscriminate, its territory a death trap to any who strayed too near. A group of our youngest hunters had done just that. Their folly now met with the monitor's vengeance. Word spread swiftly. The beast had ensnared them within its lair, and one by one it would pick them apart. This was the moment. My brother seized it, imploring our father to let me go, to prove my worth as a hunter at last. He spoke of the training he had given me in secret, the lessons forged in the shadow of tradition's grasp. For once, my father did not argue. But not out of belief. No. His prideful mind saw only an opportunity that I would be slain, devoured by the very forces we worship, my life ended by the very cycle of nature we so revere. But I did not waver, nor did I grieve. For the first time in my life, I would be seen for what I truly was, a hunter, a chance for none to ever look down upon me again. We ventured deep into the lost jungle, my brother and his hunting pack at my side, our spears gripped with resolve. The weight of our task pressed upon us, yet we did not falter. Now that the wandering monitor had birthed its successor, the laws of balance decreed that the mother's life was forfeit. Another would rise in her place, and thus, the great beast could be slain without defiance of the cycle. We arrived at the site of a horror, the ground littered with the remnants of those we had come here to save, flesh and scale torn asunder, strewn like discarded refuse. Whether all hunters had perished, we could not know. What we did know was that the mother monitor would show no mercy. And indeed, she did not. From the trees she struck, silent as death, swift as a phantom. Before any of us could react, 2 of our pack lay dead, crushed beneath her talons. Only 4 of us remained, myself, my brother, and 2 others. We had no choice. Though more unprepared than we believed, we fought. My spear found its mark, piercing one of the beast's 2 eyes. My brother and his packmates flanked her, driving their weapon deep, her lifeblood spilling forth, her great form faltering. We were succeeding. But the wrath of a mother is unyielding, as unbreakable as the skull of a pack breaker. With a single, monstrous heave, she sent us hurtling from her body. One of my brother's packmates struck a redwood with a sickening crack, his life snuffed out in an instant. 3 of us remained. We had but one choice. We needed to flee. Yet my pride, that wretched inheritance of my father's blood, would not allow it. I would not retreat. I could not. Fire of arrogance burned within me as my dream stood right before me, and I was to flee? In my blind defiance, I turned upon my own kin. I called my brother a coward. By the winged ancestors, why was I so foolish? Why had I become the very thing I loathed? In the end, it mattered not. I stood against the mother monitor, defiant even as my body ached and my breath grew ragged. Blood poured from her wounds, her strength waning. I lashed at her with my spear, not as a thrusting weapon but as a blade, carving into her flesh with every desperate strike. The great beast staggered, her limbs trembling, until at last she collapsed upon her belly. The earth trembled beneath her fall, her life slipping away like sand through grasping fingers. This was my moment, my chance to prove my father wrong. I stepped forward, raising my spear to the monitor's eye, ready to deliver the final blow. But as I gazed into that dying gaze, I saw more than just the reflection of my own form. I saw her soul. I saw myself. I saw what had become. What I had become. My father. That moment of hesitation was all it took. I had left myself exposed. Instinct surged through the monitor's fading body, and with one final, desperate thrust of her jaws, she struck. One would believe this was my undoing. It was. But not here. Oh no. My true undoing was not in death, but in life. I reeled, but my pain was nothing to the horror before me. My brother stood before me. His shoulder caught between the monitor's jaws. His grip clenched upon my spear. Our spear, driven backhanded through the beast's throat. My own hand still clung to the weapon. He turned his gaze to me. A gentle smile strewn across his face. And in that moment, I felt only horror and shame. The wound itself was minor, but the poison was already seeping into his veins. Panic gripped me. I pleaded with our last remaining packmate, "Go for help!" I begged, but he did not move. He did not falter. He simply spoke the words I already knew to be true. it would be too late. Tears burned my eyes. My brother, the only one who had ever seen me as more than a burden, more than a failure, was dying before me, all because of my selfish pride. I turned, only to find my brother's packmate raising his spear. Not toward any threat, but toward me. Confusion clouded my grief. I know my brother's death is my fault, but had I not slain the beast? Can I not pay for my crimes decided by the sages? But the answer was already etched into his sneer. He was a purist, no different from my father. He had not come just to fight beside us, but to oversee my death. To ensure that if I faltered to be slain by the Monitor, it would be him to claim my life. I could not believe it. Even now, when all had been lost, when my brother lay dying, my mere existence was still seen as a greater threat, not even a chance to mourn. And yet, he admitted he would not have dared to strike while the Monitor still lived. That was irony. My own skill, my victory, had become the very thing that doomed me. I looked down, and my horror deepened. My brother was still alive, and these final moments, his last sight, was betrayal. The last words he would ever hear were those of a packmate confessing that his presence had been nothing more than a ploy to end his sister's life, a final decree from our father. Something inside me shattered. I would take no more. The packmate sneered, declaring my brother's name alone would be honored, that his and his pack's was the only victory that would be remembered. And then, without hesitation, he charged. My mind went blank, that by the time I had returned to myself, it was already done. One of my own people lay dead at my feet, slain not by battle, but in silent, unrelenting rage. It took me a moment to grasp what I had done. The lifeless body of my brother's traitorous packmate lay at my feet, his blood seeping into the earth. I had slain one of my own kind, not in battle, not in self-defense, but in fury, in silent retribution. Such an act was nearly unforgivable. That is, if a male had done it. But never before had a female committed such a crime. This would not merely shake the foundation of my father's beliefs, it would shatter them. It would turn the entirety of our civilization against me, more than they already had. I had long been despised, but this would make me an unnatural monster in their eyes. And worse still, it could be justified. If word spread that a female had slain a male, fear would not only take root in their hearts, males would turn against us, knowing that at any moment we could strike them down. The fragile structure of our people's dominion would fracture, and from those cracks, ruin would seep forth. I had resented their laws, their arrogance, and their cruelty, but I had never sought to make females the enemy. And so, I committed even greater sin. I took the blade of my spear to the traitor's corpse, defiling it, twisting at his wounds beyond recognition. When the others found him, they would see not the marks of my fury, but the savagery of the wandering Monitor. His death would be lost within the carnage of the hunt. Yet in one thing, I did not defy his words. My brother had slain the beast, and that was the tale that would be told. A warrior's legend, the story of a hunter who felled the great Monitor, who died not in shame, but in honor, protecting his younger sister. One story granted him glory, but another stole it away. My father, upon hearing of his son's fate, felt only greater shame, His firstborn, already a disgrace for his lack of magic, had now made the ultimate sacrifice for a female. And in his eyes, the eyes of bearded civilization, no fate was more foolish. Yet even in his contempt, he did not question the truth of my tale. My brother was a hero in their eyes, and I was a burden. The blame fell upon me, as I knew it would. I was forbidden from ever hunting again, banished from the path I had fought so hard to claim. It was punishment well deserved, and yet my dream would not die. For what greater insult to my brother's memory than to let his beliefs in me fade? If I had given up, then truly, he would have died for nothing. I had already defied my brother's treacherous packmate. What was another act of defiance against my father? That night, beneath the cold and indifferent gaze of the winged ancestors, I took my brother's spear and vanished into the shadows, not to prove myself to my people, but to prove myself to me. I sought the monitor's egg. The vision of her dying gaze haunted me still. The realization struck deep. I had not merely slain a beast, but a mother, a creature who, like me, had been bound by duty, by instinct, by forces greater than herself. She had fought to protect her child, as any mother would, and I had torn that bond asunder. All for my own pride. Something my father couldn't even share blame in, for it would be nothing more than a lie. Perhaps there was no greater truth than this. Even the noblest of dreams can cast a long shadow. I traveled deep into the heart of the lost jungle, where the air hung thick with the scent of life and death intertwined. There, nestled within the cradle of an ancient grove, I found it. The egg, untouched, warm against the grass, sheltered from the chaos of the world beyond. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt peace knowing the egg was safe. But peace, as always, was fleeting. The air trembled with a force that sent shivers through my very bones, a clash of titans, a battle not meant for the eyes of lesser creatures, let alone a female member of my people. The great tyrant, the king of the wingless, locked in combat with a taureau trihorn, a variant of the tri-horned wingless. Trees fell as if they were nothing, smaller creatures fled, and I was no different. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, yet the battle loomed ever closer. To them, my desperate sprint was meaningless. The space I crossed in agony, they stepped over in a single breath. I was nothing in their wake, an insect caught between gods. And yet I confess, when I turned back, despite my terror, I was struck breathless. The rising sun painted their battle in a brilliance that seemed almost divine, as if I were glimpsing a sight only meant for gods. For that one fleeting second, I was in awe, entranced by the beauty of the struggle that had moments before filled me with dread. Time itself seemed to halt. The world stood still, allowing me to witness the raw, untamed grandeur of nature's endless war. But then, as swiftly as it paused, time surged forward once more. The ground trembled, trees snapped like brittle bones, and I found myself at the mercy of their falling wrath. Yet fate had not yet seen fit to claim me. The great redwoods, felled in the chaos, collapsed upon one another, forming a twisted barricade that spared me from their crushing weight. Well, other than my leg, that is. Crushed like a carcass bone under one of the redwoods that fell to the ground. What should have been my grave instead became my refuge. I lay hidden beneath their fallen forms, swallowed by the shadow of giants. After succeeding in painfully removing my leg from under the redwood, I climbed and peered over the tree. I beheld the battle's grim conclusion. The great tyrant stood victorious, its monstrous adversary slain, and so, as nature demanded, it fed. I watched in silent reverence, a lone, bearded female, witnessing the cycle in motion. There was no malice in the tyrant's gaze, no cruelty in its actions, only the simple, brutal truth of survival. It did not kill for vengeance, it did not devour out of spite, it acted as it must, bound to the same cycle that ruled us all. I should have feared for my life. Any creature with a sense would have fled or cowered in despair. Yet I felt no fear, only understanding, only acceptance. And so, I simply watched until it lifted its head. I shrank back, pressing myself into the shadows of my wooden tomb. The earth trembled with each thunderous step as the tyrant drew near. I could hear it sniffing, searching. I was trapped. The fallen trees had formed a natural pit, a wooden bowl with no escape, save for climbing. But to climb was to reveal myself, and even then, I would get no farther than where my shattered leg could take me. To move was to die. And so I waited, breathless, motionless. The sniffing grew louder, closer. Then, silence. Without reason, without explanation, the great tyrant turned and departed. It left behind the carcass it had feasted upon, abandoning its kill, as though the battle itself had been the true prize. I was spared. By what mercy I did not know. By the cruel whim of irony, perhaps, as of course I hide from the same tyrant now from behind this tree. In that moment I began to wonder. These so-called gods, the wingless dragons, cast in the image of their winged ancestors, did they truly abide by the cycle? To waste one's hunt was blasphemy of the highest order, a defiance of the natural law we worshipped. And yet, here stood the great tyrant, leaving its kill to rot. I could not help but feel betrayed. Was everything I had respected and been taught a lie? The gods were revered, the cycle we obeyed. Had they ever been more than stories woven to bind us in servitude? I had no time to ponder such heresy, for a crueler reality pressed upon me. I had no means of escape. The lost jungle, an arboreal labyrinth of ancient giants and creeping death, now held me prisoner. Even if I could climb free from my wooden tomb, my shattered leg would render me easy prey to the predators that lurked beyond. Would this be it? Would my father be proven right? Would his hatred be vindicated? No! I refused. First, my father sought to break me. Then, my people sought to silence me. And now, even the cycle itself conspired to erase me? No! I would not accept it, not allow it. Pain be damned, I clawed my way up, sinking my talons into the fallen redwood, dragging myself through agony, splinters tearing through flesh and scale. It took me an entire day to escape that prison of shattered trees, and in this time I felt my father laughing in the dark corners of my mind, imagining me already dead, his wish finally fulfilled. But I would not grant him that victory. I would return, alive, strong, defiant! By the time I emerged, the moon had risen high, casting its cold, indifferent light upon me. My body trembled, my breath shallow, my limbs numb with exhaustion, and yet hunger burned within me, an insatiable, ravaging fire that consumed all thought. Desperate, I tore at the greenery around me, stuffing the leaves into my mouth. Useless. I was no herbivore. Then, my gaze lifted. The carcass remained. The toro, the great tyrant had slain, untouched, its flesh still near fresh. and in desperation, I committed the greatest sin. I, a female of the bearded sages, bound by the laws of my people, devoured the body of what we held sacred. I tore into the flesh of the wingless. I feasted upon the form of what we revere as gods, or at least what I once revered as a god. Through the night, I fed, and when dawn broke, my body was changed. The pain was gone. My shattered leg healed, as if the very essence of the fallen wingless had woven itself into my form, granting me strength beyond reckoning. A miracle or curse? I did not stop to wonder. I took my brother's spear, turned my back on the bones of the fallen, and set my path homeward, unaware of the consequences that followed me. I returned home, expecting punishment. What was punishment to me now? After 2 days of suffering, of blood spilled and faith shattered, what cruelty could my father devise that I had not already endured? Whatever sentence he deemed fit, I would bear it, for I had already lost everything. But as I entered the borders of my city, spears leveled at my throat, a sight most unnatural. Though my people cared little for me, they had never once raised their weapons against their own without complete just reason, not even a female. I knew they would not suffer argument. I allowed them to lead me without resistance, surrendering my brother's spear, their silence heavier than chains. When we reached the heart of our city, the whole of our civilization stood in attendance. Faces lined the streets, watching, judging, expecting. I understood what this was. A trial with no defense. And yet, for what crime? What law had I broken that warranted such a spectacle? I had only one source of answers, and there he stood, the Grand Master of the bearded sages, my father, a towering figure of arrogance and scorn, robed in the authority of our people, wrapped in blind faith of his rule. I beheld him and felt no fear, no reverence, only the cold, burning hatred that had long since turned to ash inside me. I would bow no longer. Before he could utter his pompous decree, I demanded answers. The sharpness of my voice struck him like a blade, the sheer defiance in my tone wounding his pride. Before I had lifted a finger, "Silence!" he retorted in a lashed-out tone, breaking his composure as a spear-bearer struck me hard across the skull for my insolence. I fell to my knees, blood pooling at the corner of my lips, but I did not waver. I did not grovel. I looked up at my father with a hatred that burned brighter than the stars, and he loathed me for it. He spoke, explaining that with the magic of clairvoyance, he had seen my defiance, but greater more, he had seen my sin, my heresy. He knew that I had devoured the flesh of a god. I listened as he berated me, not with solemn judgment, not with wisdom, but with the same tired, venomous bite that had poisoned my life since birth. He spoke not of the crime, but of my being, of my worthlessness, that I was female, that I was barren, and that I was the reason for my brother's death. And now, I was a blight upon the cycle. My sins had been written before my birth, and this was merely the final verse in the song of my damnation. I could have argued, I could have pleaded, but what did it matter? I spat in the face of the wingless and the cycle alike. I mocked our beliefs, reviled our gods, and desecrated all that my father held sacred, not for enlightenment, not for justice, but out of pure, seething spite. Let him choke on his own rage. Let him fear the defiance he had failed to break, and he did. He feared me, not for what I had done, but for what I might inspire, what I prevented by ensuring my brother was known as the slayer of the wandering monitor. If one female could defy him, a male, others might follow. My heresy was a disease, and he would cure it. He sentenced me to death, a sentence I refused to let him dictate any longer. With the training my brother had given me in secret, I struck. I reclaimed my brother's spear from the warrior who held it and tore through my captors like a phantom in the night. Though they outnumbered me, they had never fought me. Only the idea of me. The weak and beaten daughter of the Grand Master, but I was no longer her. His decree was swift, ordering whoever could hunt me down. Another ironic fate for a would-be hunter. As of now, I was the hunt. My father's blindly loyal warriors would chase me to the ends of the Lost Lands to catch me. I would never know rest, never know peace, for his reach extended to the almost entirety of the Lost Lands. For the first time in my life, I understood the certainty of my death. And yet, even then, it would not be by his hand. And so, I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, until my body screamed, until my mind frayed at the edges, and now here I am. A victim under the cold and unforgiving storm, hiding behind a tree, being sought by the false god that wrought this upon me. It loomed behind me, massive, unchallenged, the very force of nature my people so worshipped, and I, a blasphemer, knelt before it, broken and without purpose. Perhaps this was the answer. To die not by my father's will, but by the hand of the very cycle he so revered. However, the tyrant did not strike. It did not move. It only sniffed in my general direction. It must have known I was here, somehow, and yet it turned, sparing my life. Another miracle. Another chance. I exhaled a breath I had not known I was holding, my chest heaving with relief. But this life, this second chance, it comes at a cost. A price I had yet to understand. And then I saw it. I see it. Beyond the trees. The dark lands. No reptilian, no amphibian, no Siberian dared step beyond that accursed threshold. Only the wingless had ever ventured there, and only those who returned. Few remained themselves. For within those forsaken lands lurked horrors beyond name, creatures of writhing darkness and ancient hunger that were once the wingless themselves, now mutilated and reformed as the Klaww. Even my father would not send his hunters there, for to be taken by the Klaww was a fate worse than death. And so, I stepped forward. I would suffer, but I would live, and that, above all else, was my father's greatest suffering. I know not how long I have been wandering this forsaken abyss. The Darklands stretch endlessly, a void of time and reason where the light of the crystals do not tread. No light finds purchase here, no white beams through the clear crystal spires, no gentle luminescence upon the earth, only that eerie, sickly glow of the fissures in the rock, seeping a spectral green like the lifeblood of some ancient dying god. I have seen them. The Klaww. Sleep eludes me. My body begs for respite, but rest is a fool's indulgence in this accursed land. I sought shelter, only for the silence to be shattered by the monstrous tread of something fearsome. Something wrong. A wingless, I thought. But no, this was not a wingless. It mocked the form of a tapir, those small, cunning predators whose index talons are curved like knives. But where a tapir moves with the grace of the hunt, this Klaww shambled like a corpse too stubborn to lay still. Its skull, stripped of flesh, grinning in perverse mockery of life, its body tinged in the same cursed green that bleeds from the walls, pulsed with a malignance I could not name. I am haunted by its image. haunted by the voices. They speak to me now. His voice, my father's, soaked in cruel amusement, my brother's, heavy with disappointment, and another, the voice of the child I was never fated to bear, cursing me for my failure to bring it into existence. A child that never was, hating me for what I could never give. Madness grips me like a lover in the dark. I must escape. I must flee. There, at the base of the highest mountain, I see it. A cave untouched by the suffocating glow. Sanctuary. I climb, I crawl, I endure, and there, in the heart of the cavern, I find it. The source. A great churning river of emerald water, pulsing with an unnatural luminescence, casting grotesque shadows upon the stone. Had no one known of this? Had none before me witnessed this profane wellspring? My throat parched, raw from thirst and weariness. Poison be damned, I need relief. I stagger to the river's edge, reaching, and then I hear it. Not voices, not whispers. A scream that's neither singular nor distinct, but 100,000 voices entwined into one wretched, howling cacophony. It drowns my thoughts, consumes my reason, and gnaws at my very being. I can take no more. I scream back! And then, all falls silent. From the depths of that silence, something stirs. A growl, low, ancient, resonating not within my ears but within the marrow of my bones. It emanates from beyond the wellspring, from a colossal structure of stone at its center. I approach, compelled by a force beyond understanding. And then I see it. A claw. But not as the others, not twisted by the wingless form, not some decayed mockery. No, this one bore the shape of our winged ancestors. A dragon. Not the mythic beasts of our stories, not the sacred, benevolent creatures carved into the pillars of our temples. No, this was something other. It stood on two powerful legs, its body sculpted, its monument of strength, its talons long as tree branches, gleamed like obsidian, its fangs jagged and curved, jutted from its maw like ceremonial daggers. Its scales, serrated, razor-edged, were not of the splendor our ancestors spoke of, but of a predator honed for war. Its eyes, cold, piercing, and sentient. This was no beast, no mindless horror. It saw me. It knew me. It acknowledged me. Without word, without sound, it turned from me and struck the stone tower with a fist of unyielding might. The rock cracked, the wellspring bled, emerald liquid seeped forth from the fissure, pooling at my feet. The dragon turned back to me, its massive claw gesturing toward the leaking spring. It was offering it to me. Why? Was this the source of the claw's corruption? The birth of their grotesque evolution? Was this creature the progenitor of the claw? Questions clawed at my mind. Yet I cared not. Thirst overpowered fear and curiosity, and so I drank. As the emerald waters coursed through me, soothing my parched throat, I turned my gaze once more to the dragon. It watched, not with malice, not with hunger, but with expectation, as though it was waiting for something to happen. In that instant, agony took me, a torment beyond reckoning, as though my very essence sought to claw its way from my flesh, my mind rending beneath the weight of some unfathomable chaos. My skull felt as if it would burst, my thoughts unraveling into 1,000 fragmented visions, and then I saw it. This dragon had not bestowed its gift out of charity, no. It sought to show me, to strip away the blind faith that had shackled me to ignorance. The wingless, those I had once revered as gods, were never divinities. They were victims. I beheld the falling star, the cataclysmic ruin that rent the sky asunder, the inferno that scoured the land, heralding the coming of a new age. From the ashes I saw them, the interlopers, the usurpers, humanity. Very pale and feeble creatures, yet possessed a relentless hunger, a hunger for power. They had no claim to this world, yet they took it, driving the remnants of the wingless into the abyss, branding them as mindless animals fit for the slaughter. We had been deceived. All these centuries, all these millennia, we had worshipped them, never hearing their cries for salvation, their silent suffering from their stolen birthright. I see now that their fate was no divine decree, not part of any grand cycle. They were victims, just as I myself am a victim, cast away by those who believe themselves above everything. I was discarded by my father, by my people, born of a mother whose name I shall never know. Another faceless soul lost to my father's insatiable ambition, but no longer. I embrace it now. The gift, the truth. I feel the power surge through me, unburdened by the doubt that once fettered my soul. My magic, my inheritance, born not of compassion, but of consumption. I am no mere healer, for my strength thrives upon the taking, the devouring, the very cycle I dare to defy. The emerald waters course through my veins, twisting and reshaping my form into its rightful image. My body ascends, my scales, once undulled by mortality, sharpen into jagged emerald plates. My spines lengthen across my back, fangs curved into razored crescents. And at last, the final gift is bestowed upon me. Wings, the very same that the dragon before me bears. I had cursed the Klaww as abominations, but now I see them for what they truly are. They are not perversions of nature, but its correction. The rightful reclaimers of a world stolen from them, and I shall be their harbinger. The age of the bearded sages ends this night, for my father shall suffer a fate beyond death, his wretched order reduced to ruin, their very names stripped from history. I shall erase them, as the wingless were erased. And when the ashes settle, I shall look beyond. The surface world will be reclaimed, and the wingless shall rise once more. For I shall be their voice, their mother, and my mate, my champion of a dragon, shall be their blade. Prepare thyself, Gaia. Mother Klaww is here, and the age of the dinosaurs shall return. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Our merch store and Amazon affiliate links are currently unavailable at the moment. However, in the meantime, you can go to our Buy Me a Coffee page and donate $5 in support of the channel. That way, you can help us toward our goal of bringing you guys higher quality content. You can also check out our original content, which will be linked in the description down below. But with all that said and done, I'm JT Anime, and I'll check you guys later.